You may be seated. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Judge Daniel Coble. I am the Chief Administrative Judge for the 5th Judicial Circuit Court of Common Pleas. It is my honor and privilege to be able to preside over this very special memorial service that we have on an annual basis. It truly is special to be here today. I know it is a sad day as we remember those who have passed in the prior year, but it is also a joyful time as we remember those who have had such an impact, not just professionally, but on us personally, and they will always be remembered, especially when we have the events today that are made part of an official court record. First and foremost, I want to thank the Richland County Bar Association. I know Derek Williams, the president, has done an outstanding job as the president. Mandy Wren, always putting this together, does an excellent job, and is always hiding in the back there. The co-chairs, Wade Mullins, Anthony Lavodi, thank y'all very much for getting this together. It really is a special event. Judge Kipson, thank you for being here. Are there any elected or appointed officials present? I'd like to acknowledge any dignitaries. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. Thank you to the clerk's office for helping us put this together, Madam Clerk Jeanette McBride as well. Today is a special day. Before I recognize President Williams, I'd just like to note that today there are two daughters commemorating their fathers, as well as two granddaughters, their grandfathers. And as a father to two girls, it is special to think one day they'll remember what we did. So it really is an honor and special personally on that note. Without anything further, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Judge Coble. Good afternoon. I'm Derek Williams, President of the Richland County Bar Association, and it is my honor to welcome you all here today to this gathering, a time of remembrance and celebration for remarkable individuals who have gone before us. Today, we honor their service not only as esteemed members of this local bar, but as beloved husbands, wives, siblings, children, uncles, aunts, cousins, friends, and colleagues. Judge Coble has already welcomed the members who are judges, so he's stolen my thunder on that. He's welcomed elected officials as well, but I want to give special thanks to Anthony and to Wade. Thank you for co-chairing this and always being willing to help out our local bar. Thank you to Mandy Wren, who is hiding back there, for organizing all of this as well. We're privileged today to hear from several family members and other friends who will speak in honor of their loved ones. But we're very especially proud today that we have some loved ones who will be speaking about their grandfathers and their fathers. And this is of note as we approach Father's Day on this Sunday. This is a time that reminds us of the lasting influence of those that we hold dear. Today we will hear from Annie Day Bain speaking in honor of her grandfather, Richard Earl Day, who was a former dean of the University of South Carolina Joseph F. Rice School of Law. We'll have Carolyn Latimer honoring her grandfather, Edward Ed Latimer. We will have Liz McMahon Pence sharing memories of her father, the Honorable Judge R. Knox McMahon. And we will have Miss Virginia Tate, an attorney from Georgia, speaking in tribute to her father, H. Simmons Tate, Jr. On this day, may we not only acknowledge lives well lived, but may we also reflect on the goodness they brought to this world, the values that make our practice and our bar meaningful, and more importantly, the lasting imprint we have the opportunity to leave. Your presence here today is a testament to the love and to the respect these individuals inspired. Though they are no longer physically with us, their memories remain vivid and carried forward by all who knew them. There's an African proverb that says, "As long as you speak my name, I shall live forever." So today, we speak the names of Dean Richard Earl Day, Alan E. Fulmer Jr., Edwin Wallace Ned Johnson II, Edward Ed Brandt Latimer, the Honorable Royce Knox McMahon, Buell Jennings Reeves, David William Siddons, Christina Marie Summer, and H. Simmons Tate Jr. May their legacies continue to inspire us, and may we honor them not only in words, but in the way that we live and serve others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We'll first recognize Annie Day Bank.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is Annie Day Bain. I'm a 2020 graduate of USC School of Law, and I want to thank the Richland County Bar Association for giving me the opportunity to talk about my grandfather, who we called Pop, on behalf of myself and my family. While I immediately joined the Richland County Bar when I graduated, my grandpa took a more interesting route. He graduated with a degree of economics from the University of Pennsylvania in 1951, served as a lieutenant in the Navy during the Korean War, and ultimately earned his law degree from the University of Michigan in 1957. Before joining the faculty at USC Law, he was a visiting professor at the University of North Carolina and Ohio State University. He was also a visiting professor at several schools, including a stint abroad in England. Pop joined USC School of Law in 1974, and in 1977 he was named dean. This gave him the opportunity to hood my dad, Bill Day, at the 1979 commencement ceremony. My grandfather was very intelligent. As I prepared to talk about him today, I reviewed some of the articles he wrote in the areas of intellectual property, antitrust, and trade secrets. I attempted to sludge through an article called Dealer Terminations and Resale Price Maintenance, Paradox, Revisited. I was reminded just how smart he was. In addition to his academic footprint, my grandfather left a legacy of generosity. He was an accomplished pianist, and both my grandparents were significant supporters of the development of the USC School of Music and its Southeastern Piano Festival. Having studied piano from the age of 9, he believed that music was a basic that everyone should have access to. In addition to a scholarship at the law school, he donated the Steinway piano that currently sits in the Perrin family lobby. And on a more personal note, he loved art, music, sailing, travel. He loved talking politics, and he loved teaching law. He was a proud father and grandfather. He and my grandmother were married for 71 years before her death in 2023. My grandparents loved to sail and travel the world together, a love they passed down to us through family trips and summers spent boating on Lake Murray. Pop ensured his children and grandchildren were able to pursue higher education and was proud that some of us followed in his footsteps. My dad, Bill Day, is a retired assistant United States attorney. My brother, Billy Day, is a rising 3L at USC Law. I'm currently a law clerk to Judge Joe Anderson at the District of South Carolina. His primary disappointment may have been our lack of any musical skill or interest. It somehow skipped 2 generations. Luckily, he was fortunate enough to meet my son, his great-grandson, and pass the piano down to him. Owen now plays the piano with his dad, my husband Wilson, so there may be hope yet for another part of my grandpa's legacy. Born in 1929, he passed away January 11th, 2024 at 94 years old. He lived a full life and left a lasting legacy, and I appreciate the opportunity to share his memory with all of you.
We'll next recognize Daniel E. Sharrouse.
Judge Coble, thank you for this opportunity to speak about my friend Alan E. Fulmer, Jr. I would be remiss if I didn't start off with this most important thing in Alan's life, and that is his love and devotion for his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Many of you may know about his participation in the First Baptist Church, where he diligently attended, where he taught Sunday school, where he most importantly sang in the choir. What a beautiful voice Alan had. He also participated in the Salkehatchie mission projects. I've had some experience with that. My daughter ran one for a Methodist church that's helping people of lesser means repair their homes. It's a wonderful thing to do, and Alan really enjoyed that. So the first and most important thing is his service to his church and importance. Next to Alan, I think the most important thing would be his love of family, of his wife Julie and his sister Beth. and unfortunately 2 other siblings that predeceased him, and then also for his nieces and nephews. And he had the privilege of being in a law partnership with his nephew, Bennett Evers, and then of course his parents. Alan loved his parents dearly, and of course he practiced law for most of his time in a law practice with his father. And I just add that Alan said that his father always told him, "One day this will all be yours." Well, that was the day that Alan hadn't quite take that long, but it was before Mr. Alan Fulmer Sr. retired, but it did come about finally. But Alan just laughed about how long his father practiced, but his father had a great practice. So love of family, love of his relatives. Alan also loved acting. You would see him at the town theater, sometimes in a leading role, sometimes in just a bit part. But Alan was great as an actor, and we'll talk about that, how we use that in our Army Reserve for Alan. But he also served on their board, so Alan loved acting. I want to talk a little bit about his patriotism. Alan and I were in law school together. We were not in the same section, so I didn't see him very much the first year. We, of course, ran into each other more in the second and third years. And finally, we became the best of friends as we attended the dreaded bar review course. And we were sort of like after each session of the exam, we would compare notes. So we drew very close. But unfortunately, then you're split up, life arrives, and you go your different ways. I went into the Army. Alan went to practice law with his father, and sort of drifted apart. Meanwhile, I'd come off active duty, went into the Army Reserves, and Alan suddenly, at the ripe old age of 32, joins our unit. Now probably the oldest first lieutenant in the whole JAG Corps. That is quite a feat in and of itself. It also is a feat that Alan continued to soldier despite the fact it took the Army so long to process his packet to get in that he wasn't eligible to retire, because at the time you had to have 20 good years by the time you reached age 52. That luckily changed, and Alan was able to retire as a lieutenant colonel. But I just think it's an indication of how dedicated he was, that despite the fact he was not going to get any retirement, he was willing to serve. Alan became, and Chief Justice Peconis would probably agree with me, the voice of the 12th. He was the voice that you heard at every change of command, every award ceremony, every promotion ceremony, or any other kind of event where we had to have an announcer. His voice was that booming voice that we all heard, and so we laughingly always called it the voice of the 12th. He'd also, of course, naturally help us if we needed an invocation, so Alan was very good. He and I worked together as the training officers. He was my assistant, and we were placed in a very unusual position of trying to get people to conduct Army training to standard when that's the last thing an Army Reserve unit wants to do. So it was always a challenge. And Alan's great attribute there was that he had the ability to persuade people to do training that they might not otherwise want to do. So he just had a great ability to communicate, not only to his subordinates, but also to his superiors. And he was really a very good officer. And then my favorite was Alan also sort of became my traveling companion when we finally figured out how to get overseas deployment training. And Alan and I had the privilege of going 3 times to Germany and 1 time to the Panama Canal before it closed. He was a delightful person to travel with, and I enjoyed it. I want to talk briefly, I know I'm probably getting close to my time. Yes, he's holding up the card. I want to talk briefly about his practice of law. I told Bennett Evers that, wouldn't it be better for you to do it? You practice law with him. You know more about him than I do about what his practice was. And then I got to thinking about it. I was his client. I used him for my mother's and father's estates. I used him for estate planning. I used him for real estate closing, drafting contracts. Wouldn't we all, as lawyers, like to hear praise from one of our lawyers? So actually, I think I may be in the best position to praise him. And he was outstanding. In fact, he was so good that my wife is one of 8 children, and her generates 4 is 1 of 10, so I have all sorts of relatives, and all of those would ask for, well, I need a will, I need a closing, and I recommended Alan. Alan always came through because he's just a great lawyer. So I will just leave it at that since I'm running out of time. I could not have asked for a better friend than Alan Fulmer, as a comrade in the Army Reserve and as my lawyer. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about it.
We'll next recognize Richard J. Morgan.
May it please the court.
Yes, sir.
Vicki, family members, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, good afternoon. I am Rick Morgan, a longtime friend and law partner of Ned Johnson. When Wade Mullins contacted Vicki, Ned's wife, about this annual event, she reached out to me and asked if I would share remarks at this memorial service as I had at Ned's funeral in January of 2024. I am honored to do so. I will give a brief factual background and then a more personal view with the remarks I gave at his service at Trinity Episcopal Cathedral a little over a year ago. Ned left this earthly life on January 20th, 2024. Ned was born on June 3rd, 1947 in Spartanburg. He was a son of the late Dr. George Dean Johnson Sr. and Elizabeth Heath Johnson. Ned was honored to carry the name his Uncle Ed, Edwin W. Johnson, a graduate of the University of South Carolina and USC Law School. Ned worked as an attorney for Burr Foreman, previously the McNair Law Firm. In 1985, Governor McNair invited Ned to establish a labor and employment practice at the McNair firm, a practice he led until his retirement in December 2023. Ned was one of the premier labor and employment law attorneys in South Carolina, recognized nationally as a management-side labor lawyer. Ned mentored many young lawyers, always willing to listen and guide young professionals as they advanced in their careers. His bar admissions and activities included the Court of Military Appeals, and he served as a member of the Fourth Circuit Judicial Conference. Ned was a voracious reader, beginning each day with his print newspaper and often ending the day with a book in his hand. In addition to his love of reading, his hobbies included hunting. Surviving are his wife Vicki, who's sitting here today, and brothers George Dean Johnson Jr. and Stuart Heath, and numerous nieces and nephews. At his funeral service, I shared some of my memories of my old friend Ned as follows. The year was 1979. I was working at Armstrong World Industries in Lancaster, Pennsylvania as in-house counsel. Like many corporations, we use many outside law firms. The firm we used for the hard labor work sent several lawyers, Ned being one of them, to help the company keep one of its plants union-free. That is how we met. This kind of work can be intense work, having to be done in a short period of time, and you get to know a person, the good, the not so good, and even the ugly. Our friendship began at that time. Like many friendships and relationships, ours evolved over time. Not always on a straight line, but never straying from what I came to understand was that in Ned's quiet way, he would never leave a friend alone or behind. He was the guy that if you were in a tough spot would sit with you, listen, sometimes dispense advice. He was that guy that picked up the phone, would call and check in to make sure you were doing okay. There was always a hint of humor in the way he and I interacted. In one of our early union campaigns, I was driving an old bucket of bolts that might or might not start on any particular day. Ned reminded me that election day was important and was skeptical about whether or not my car would make it. He took me aside and with a twinkle in his eye asked if it would be possible if we used Mommy and Megan's car on election day. We did, and as he sat down in the passenger seat, he started to light up a cigarette. I reminded him that there was no smoking in that car. That was a long 40-minute drive with the window down on a 20-degree Pennsylvania winter day. Ned was the guy who was around when our girls were born, followed their growth to womanhood, and our oldest of Mommy and Megan's car, a mother herself. He always wanted to know what the girls were doing, loved to hear the stories about their travels, and loved to share his stories about his nieces and nephews and the pride he had in each of them. He simply was that guy that cared and was happy for others. It's a lesson I take with me every day. When Vicki called a couple of weeks ago and said Ned was in the hospital, and after several visits, I knew the end was near. You think of many things, what we did, what we said, what was left unsaid. I recalled the many lunches with Ned and a young colleague, Hayne Hodges, where we more than once talked about sitting in rocking chairs at Still Hopes, and Hayne visiting and giving us an update on his and Shiva's 4 boys. There was a song from my college days that kept ringing in my head. Many of you might remember some of its lyrics from this classic Simon and Garfunkel song, Old Friends, that bookends album. Can you imagine us years from today sharing a park bench quietly? How terribly strange to be 70, old friends. Memory brushes the same years, silently sharing the same fear. Long ago, it must be. I have a photograph. Preserve your memories. That's all that left you. One end of that park bench now sits empty, but I hope we all have our memories of our old friend, remembering his caring, and that he was a guy who knew what it was to be a true friend. I would like to leave you with this following prayer. As we bow our heads to pray, we give thanks to you, God, for this day and every day that brings us the first dawn of light, for the warmth of the sun and nourishing drops of rain, and the marvel at the end of the day as the shadows lengthen and the busy day is hushed. We are humbled by your grace and that you continue to bless each of us here today as we lift up the following from my friend Ned. May the rose rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the rain fall soft upon your field. Till we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Amen, amen, and amen.
Amen.
We'll next recognize Caroline E. Latimer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Bar for organizing this memorial service to honor the members of our profession who have left us in the past year. It is a meaningful tradition, one that reminds us of the bonds that tie us together as lawyers, colleagues, and stewards of justice. I'm here today to share my family's memories and my own of one of those former members, my Pa, Edward Brant Latimer. Pa was a lifelong member of the Bar, maintaining his license until his passing at the young age of 97. He loved the law, not for the power or prestige, but for the sense of community and the opportunity to help others. As I recently learned from Mandy, he never missed a chance to thank the Bar for their hard work or comment on their events, and he always kept up to date on what the Bar was doing. Even after his retirement, my Pa never truly stopped practicing. He continued to help people, drafting wills and offering advice, and every year he would ask my spouse for a copy of that year's legislative manual, just so he could keep up with things. He practiced law with integrity, compassion, and a dry wit that could disarm even the most contentious of opposing counsels. Being remembered by the Bar today would truly have meant so much to him. That dry wit is one of the most defining traits my Pa had.
He had many running jokes that could make you laugh out loud. But there is one in particular that he shared with his grandchildren that I'd like to share with y'all today. He would look one of us in the eye and announce to the room, "You know, you're my favorite fourth eldest granddaughter." It always made us laugh. We'd usually respond, "Of course I am, because I'm your only fourth eldest granddaughter." Eventually, I realized this is classic attorney speak. Like a cleverly worded clause in a contract, it was affectionate and ironclad, sentimental, and not legally binding. If y'all enjoy the one-liner, we got to slip a few in his obituary, and they're all as equally funny if you want to hear some more. But I digress. Beneath the humor and the legalese was a deep, unwavering love. We were all truly his favorite grandchildren. Pa showed that same love and wit to his wife, Nanny Dorothy Latimer, who's still here today, to his children, and to everyone lucky enough to know him. His marriage to my nanny was a testament to lasting partnership, devotion. Thank you all for honoring and remembering him today.
We next recognize Elizabeth McMahon Lentz.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I report? Members of the judiciary, fellow attorneys, friends, family, and invited guests. For those unfamiliar, I'm Liz, Knox McMahon's oldest. Sarah, my younger sister, also an attorney and a member of the Richland County Bar, and Matthew, our younger brother, could not be here today, but send their regards. Knox McMahon's extensive resume and accomplishments would far exceed the time limits today. Suffice it to say, he was one of the best trial lawyers in South Carolina history. I offer, I hope, a glimpse into the man and father. Though we did not all appreciate it, fortunately, the three of us were raised by Nita, our mother, a German Baptist accountant, and Dad, an Irish Catholic cop and prosecutor. Rules were not just a way of life, they were the only way. Recently, I discovered a great reminder when I came across my 9th grade report card. Then they were paper, mainly handwritten. One teacher reported Liz never turned in a term paper. Dad's response, "I assure you that Elizabeth will do a term paper and turn it in, not for purposes of credit, but to fulfill her assigned responsibility, although late." I have no memory of this, but no doubt I probably did do the term paper. Almost 20 years later, Dad, an assistant with the Honorable Barney Gazette, and I, an assistant attorney general in post-conviction relief, talked one afternoon. Dad offered what ultimately was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to try a murder case with him. He would obtain the special permission, and it was a 2-week commitment. I tried to figure it out. If you know anything about PCR, the intent is very important, and it stays consistently busy. Terms of PCR court, like all terms of court, you can't just move terms of court. There were no extra assistant attorney generals around to pick up the slack. And if I was out 2 weeks, my coworkers would have to pick up the slack, 2 of which were colleagues, classmates, and friends. My regret was always softened because Eddie Donald, a friend of mine, tried that case with Dad. Still, I wondered, what if I'd said yes? If I had said yes, I would be an exclusive group of lawyers who tried a case with Knox McMahon, and part of a pair of sisters who tried a case with Dad. He was never negative or judgmental. He didn't act offended. When I came across the report card, which, by the way, was before Mandy asked me to speak today, my remaining regret went away because I realized Dad knew why I declined. He knew exactly why. It was his lessons and his expectations that he put in writing 20 years prior. An assistant AG was my responsibility at the time, and that's what I had to do. So when your child acts exactly as you've taught, how can you walk? For this and countless lessons, the wisdom, the debates, the disagreements, the love, tough and otherwise, the laughter, the stories, if anyone knows Knox McMahon, the stories, and everything in between. Matt, Sarah, and I are grateful that Knox McMahon was our dad. May he rest in peace. Thank you. Thank you.
Next recognized Charles L. Gray.
Please, court. Before I get started, I will say that Buell Reeves was a solo practitioner, much like myself. He was a real estate attorney. I do real estate transactions, and that's what he did. That's what I learned from him. And as such, we measure success in not ending up in a courtroom. So maybe not my most comfortable spot, but anyway. Again, my name is Charles Gray, and I got a phone call a few days ago from Mandy Wren. We had a great conversation. She was asking if I would speak on behalf of Buell, and I'll try to get all the way through it, but I was more than happy to do it. Of all the people I know, I think Buell probably is more deserving than most to have somebody speak and say some kind words on his behalf. Probably deserves better than to have me say them, but here we are. Buell was my friend for 30 plus years. Somewhere around 2001, I found myself gainfully unemployed, and Buell had just opened up his practice downtown on Calhoun Street. And so I went down there, knocked on his door, walked in, and Buell turned the corner, and I just looked at him and said, "I work for you now." And just like Buell and his character, he didn't bat an eye. There was no going back and forth trying to figure out how he could do it. He just kind of walked me quietly to a closet that he had turned into an office and had lots of recording that needed to be done. He said, "Here you go, you work for me now." And so that's just kind of the guy that Buell was. I spent 8 years working for him, so he was my boss. And then for the last 15 years, we were colleagues. So working for him gave me the opportunity to go to law school, and I obviously owe him a great debt of gratitude. Buell was a devoted husband to Sue Reeves. Unfortunately, we lost Sue about 6 years ago. She fought a very rapid and brief battle with cancer. Just like Buell, gone way too early. Buell was 60 when he passed away. Together, Buell and Sue had 3 beautiful children, and Buell was just an absolutely proud, engaging, loving, and just involved dad to Erica and English, his daughters, and to Max, his son. And I'm gonna say proud a bunch. He was certainly proud of all of his kids, but about 3.5 years ago, I got a phone call from him, and Buell was just beaming. You could tell he was super excited to let me know that Max, his oldest, had been accepted into law school. And I'm proud on behalf of Buell to let everybody know that Max just graduated from the Charleston School of Law. So he's gonna follow in his dad's footsteps. And I think that's a great tribute. Buell was a man with many friends. He just had a very calm, just great demeanor. And anybody that met Buell wanted to be friends with Buell. Just a great guy. And he had lots of friends. He was involved with his church. And again, had lots of friends, but you start thinking about, who might your best friend be? And it was really clear and easy to see with Buell who his best friend was. It was his brother, Herbie Reeves. They're all from the same cloth. They're just great individuals. And like I say, it's an honor to be here speaking on his behalf. I don't know if I can get through a story, but if I got a little bit of time, I'll try to tell a little story so you can understand a little bit more about Buell. Back in the late 90s, Buell was working for Ratchford and Associates here in Columbia. They changed names now, Ratchford and May, I believe, or not sure what it is at this point, but he blacked out while driving and ran through a red light, hit some cars, I think they were parked on the side of the road, and came to find out that he had a brain tumor. And that's what it caused him to black out, to lose consciousness. And it was a particularly bad kind that sort of stretched out into, his brain, and he was seeking some care for that. He actually ended up at Duke to have brain surgery. And you guys know where Duke is, Raleigh, Durham, somewhere around there where the hospital is. But I was in Greenville, South Carolina on a family vacation. I just decided, I think it was a Monday, I'm pretty sure it was a Monday. For this story, it was a Monday. That I said, I need to go see Buell. And so I jumped in the car, and this is before having all the GPS and all the other wonderful things that or at least I didn't have it. But I found my way to the hospital, and I got there and got up to his room. I think I probably had to talk my way in there because it was kind of late. And saw his name on the door, and you just don't know what you're going to get. You know, walking into something like that, you know what he went through that morning. So I opened the door, and Buell is sitting on his hospital bed, working a crossword puzzle and watching Monday Night Football. So that's a little bit about who he is and was, and that was in the late 90s. So after that, he got married, had 3 beautiful kids, opened up his own practice, had a successful practice, and certainly was a great mentor to me. So very appreciative of that, and I think the legacy of Buell will live on through his 3 kids, through Max, not just because he's going to be an attorney, but in the way that they live. Max, Eric, and English will certainly carry that on. Thank you.
We'll next recognize W. Edward Howard Jr.
Thank you, Hunter. My name is Eddie Howard. I'm here to talk about David's sentence today. Some of what I'm going to tell you I remember, and some of it has been told to me by Leila Dennis and David's son, William. David was born in Hillsboro, Ohio, and when he was growing up, his parents used to bring him to Myrtle Beach all the time. And he liked South Carolina because it was warm and Ohio was cold. So he had a plan. He graduated from Miami University in Ohio and came to work here with Arthur Anderson as a CPA. Got his CPA degree, and at the time I was in the firm with Bob Young up on Marion Street here in Columbia. And we got together with David and found out what his plans were. He was a CPA, wanted to go to law school, wanted to go to New York University, which is what Bob and I had done. It was a perfect fit. And he clerked with us while he was in law school. And after he graduated from law school, he went to NYU and came back and came to work in our firm for a number of years. And we had a great time with David there. I'm a solo practitioner now. One of the things that I liked about being in a firm was you could always ask somebody for a second opinion. And David would ask me, I'd ask him, we'd ask Bob, so we'd all get together, figure out what we were doing. And David was really good. All the clients liked him, and he was a great attorney. As law firms do, the firm broke up eventually. I went to Lexington. David went out on I-26 and opened up his own office. All of us were tax specialists in South Carolina. David was a member of the Board of Specialization and recommended me for the board. So for many years, David had his own firm out there in St. Andrews. Mostly practiced elder law and probate, although he did a good bit of tax stuff. And we talked to each other occasionally about what was going on and asked for advice on things that we needed to know something about and get a second opinion on, similar to what we've been doing when we were working together downtown. David treated all his clients as friends, which is something you kind of tend to do in estate planning. You really get to know people a lot of times more than you really want to know. But it's a different kind of practice from trial work and that type of stuff. This is probably the 5th time I've ever been in a courtroom, and I try to stay away too. But David, you get involved with other people's problems. David would help his clients with problems that really didn't have anything to do with what they came to him for. And was a good person for advice for his clients as well. Now, he has 2 sons, Daniel and William. I believe William is here today. They lived out on Lake Murray, which was a great place. If you're in South Carolina, part of the attraction is the lifestyle. They had jet skis and boats and did lake-type things. And when David got ready to retire, he got a house at Kiowa and was going to go down there. And he closed up his office on Friday afternoon and died sometime Monday morning. He was young, comparatively to me anyway. And he was a great lawyer. He was a good friend. People liked him, and we'll miss him. Thank you.
We'll now recognize Catherine Thomas.
Good afternoon. Christina Summer was my colleague and dear friend. 25 years ago, I interviewed and hired Christina to work as an associate at Gillette, Savitz & Bettis. For most of the next 13 years, Christina was my litigation buddy and work friend. She was smart, tough, and determined. She was also sweet and empathetic. In 2013, at the young age of 41, Christina was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. The next year, she decided she could not work any longer. Our firm had a retirement party for her in her honor, and believing the end was near, she and I both believed that, I took her on a trip to Morocco, which we both thought would be her last hurrah. But that was only the beginning of many more hurrahs, as it turned out Christina still had 10 more years to live. Christina had always enjoyed being near the ocean. She moved to the Isle of Palms, where she attracted a large group of fun-loving beach friends. Christina loved to socialize, and she met many new friends through volunteer work. She enjoyed leadership roles in fundraising and community projects. She was outgoing. She embraced and projected joy. She would send photos of herself in various costumes for various costume parties. She had a myriad of wigs of various colors and styles. She always wore a broad smile. After several years, Christina found she had to work again. She practiced law part-time for a few years, but eventually had to stop. 3 years ago, Christina accepted my offer of a place to stay in Columbia. She needed cancer treatment again and wanted to be near her parents for what she believed would be the last 6 to 12 months of her life. I loved having Christina in my neighborhood. We became even closer during that time, which ended up being another 2.5 years. In August of last year, Christina calmly told family and friends she had reached the end of treatment and was ready to go. She threw herself her 52nd birthday party, complete with costumes for a true last hurrah. 9 days later, she left this life. Throughout her life, and despite her illness, Christina continued to focus on personal growth and helping others. Even while sick from chemotherapy and sporting a bald head, Christina was always sweetly smiling, laughing, and genuinely interested in knowing what was happening in other people's lives. I have asked for some input from other people for today's memories of Christina. Attorney Amy Gaffney, who also knew Christina as an attorney and friend, says, "Christina was magical and a wonderfully unique and true friend. She made herself available for good times and to help others through difficult times. If you had a good heart, Christina would be your friend. She had time for anyone. Christina was an amazing advisor. She saw many angles to any given situation, and drawing on her tremendous capacity for empathy, could truly put herself in another's position and see the viewpoints of others. We jokingly refer to Christina as the prophet because of the depth of her insight and the sagacity of her counsel. Her skills served her well as an attorney and likewise made her a deeply valued friend." Another attorney friend, Joe Underwood, says, "Christina was so sweet and had such a girly voice that people were lured into thinking she was a softie, but she was decidedly not so. She also could be incredibly self-deprecating and wickedly funny." A close friend, Melody Yale, says, "Christina has such an uplifting and powerful way about her that you had no choice but to feel better after speaking with her. Our neighbors and friends would often seek her advice, not just on legal topics, but also on life topics. She was generous with her time and always met us with a huge smile. Christina was passionate about her volunteer work." Another friend, Meg Elam, says, "It is remarkable how big an influence Christina has had on so many people. I almost feel as if the universe allowed her to stay here to help me with my life. She changed my perspective on so many things. She taught me how to grow emotionally and spiritually. She was such an amazing, powerful soul. She was pure sunshine." Indeed, those who knew Christina Summer wholeheartedly agree. We miss her.
Now recognize Virginia Clayton Tate.
My name is Virginia Tate, and I graduated USC Law School in 1990, and I'm here to speak about my father, Simmons Tate. My father was an exceptional man. He was an exceptional man as a lawyer, as a father, as a grandfather, as a husband, and as a devout Christian. He was also the consummate gentleman, Southern gentleman, and a true academic. He was born in 1930, raised in Clemson, South Carolina, where his father was a professor of industrial economics. They moved to Tokyo when my father was in high school because my father was working for the government there. After high school there, he went to Harvard at age 16 with his pipe in hand and playing bridge. Yeah. He graduated from there and went straight to the Army in Germany and had my mother, Elizabeth Coker Tate, come over to marry him in Athens, Greece, where my grandfather was working. They then went from warm Greece to Boston, where they lived for 3 years, where my father went to Harvard Law School. After he graduated Harvard, they returned to Columbia, South Carolina, and my father worked for the Lyles firm, which was a predecessor of Hazer Sinkler Boyd, where he practiced for his nearly 50 years that he practiced law. He loved the practice of law. He mainly did corporate defense work, a lot of pharmaceutical cases, also represented South Carolina Electric and Gas in a huge litigation, multi-year litigation against Westinghouse. That was before the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, so he was in Richmond a good bit when we were in high school. He loved to mentor younger attorneys. At his memorial service, a lot of his colleagues came up to me and gave me very specific examples of how he had mentored them as young attorneys. Frank Mood said that he had given a brief to my father, and it came back with so much red you couldn't even see the black ink anymore. He practiced mainly in federal court, and he was very involved in the South Carolina federal court system. He was the chairman of the U.S. District Federal Advisory Committee. He also co-wrote the South Carolina Federal Rules of Evidence. He was a member of the American Law Institute and the Fourth Circuit Judicial Conference. In 2002, he won the Durant Award, and that was that was so important to him. He was also a wonderful family man. He was such a wonderful father to my sisters, Mary Elizabeth, Martha, and me. Such a great grandfather to Frank, Renee, and Elizabeth, Martha Park's children. He loved my mother. He adored my mother. They were married for 73 years, and he always attributed his success to her love and support. He taught us critical thinking. He would come home from work at about 6:30 in the evening, have a drink, and then watch the news, Walter Cronkite, and then we'd all sit down to the dinner table together. And he'd present cases to us. He'd give the plaintiff's side of the case, and we were all very pro-plaintiff after he gave that presentation, and said, well, the drug company, they just need to be sued, they need to pay. And then he would present the defense side of the case. And so that's really where we learned critical thinking. He would give us both sides, and we would ask questions, and we would banter back and forth. And that's such a wonderful memory for me. My parents really emphasized education and travel. No expense was spared in terms of education, whatever we want to do, and travel. they always took us on wonderful family trips, and as the grandchildren got older, they would take them each one at a time on special trips. Frank got to go to the Galapagos Islands. I think Renee went to Italy. But they were always emphasizing travel. My father was a true academic. He loved history. He would come home after the family had settled at night. He wouldn't just read a novel, he would read The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire or the history of medieval Europe. So he loved history. When he was in his mid-70s, after he had retired, he went back to USC and got his PhD in history. So he was also a devout Christian. He was on the vestry at Trinity, and then when they moved down to Charleston around 2000, he was a member of St. Michael's Church. And my parents went on a mission trip to the Ukraine as he was a member of that church. So in all, I think in conclusion, I have to say, my father, Simmons Tate, was an exceptional man.
To all the speakers, I want to thank you for those wonderful comments and memories from those who are remembering today. After this proceeding, there are light refreshments out in the lobby if you'd like to gather and speak. I want to thank several other dignitaries who are here today: Chief Justice Costa-Placonis, Dean Wilcox, Judge Alex Imgren. I saw Solicitor Donnie Myers, former State Representative Walton McLeod III, and my dear friend and mentor Lee Levinas here as well. So thank you all for being here today. To the members of the family, I know this is a special day. You all will remember them, but we will remember them too in our profession. So as Judge Morgan so beautifully said, until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. We are adjourned.